All right, can I just check, is everyone now awake? Yes. Awesome, you've only got 30 minutes to finish up. All righty. The last bit, I think we are putting this forward to a fishbowl. I need Bree, well done. I need Bree and Amanda to come up here and talk us through, please. No, you've got enough of your voice left, Amanda, come on. Come on down.
Maybe we could bring up the website again.
Yep, no worries. Shouldn't have turned it off. It's about which point we discovered that someone unplugged it.
Technology.
Whose idea was it to work with technology?
All right.
That's an important one, I think, the power.
Number one for emerging technology, leave it plugged in.
That's all right. We'll go slowly.
All right. There we go. All right. We might get some life out of it. All right. Do you guys want to do one roaming mic and just one? Will you be able to flip between the two?
No, we'll fit between the two.
Okay. Just give us a second. You see how good the debate was? Windows on this laptop just decided it was going to sleep. We will get there.
It's depressed by your vote. That's what's happened.
Yeah, it just it had shut down. The power plug was taken out. Yeah.
So if you haven't pitched your problem yet on Slido, if you'd like to do that now while we're getting connected, there's about 10 or so on there, and we'll do some voting. But we're just waiting for Zell to put hers in. She's got a couple. Did anyone not have access to Slido and would like to put forward a problem anyway that we'd like us to type in directly?
Yes.
No? Okay. Well, I might just, I can read what I've got, what's up there already.
No, do you want to grab one of the mics and maybe just step across? Otherwise, I won't have enough room.
Okay, so we have about 10 pictures. I'm going to start with the first one at the bottom here, the last one that's been put in. How do we get more people with disabilities on TV and in movies? It's a great problem. I would like all link text to visually present using unique descriptive text. How do we get that done? Are widget services like OZeWAI accessible, and can they replace the need to make content accessible? How do we create accessibility certification that works for Australians? AAP exams require renewal by watching American conferences. How can organisations reliably choose an accredited accessibility specialist? Jan, you've got one in there twice, so it's all right. Making PDFs accessible is complex. We are converting them to HTML. However, for compliance reasons, they are required. We have done training, but still struggling. That's a good one. Someone's voted for that one as well. Free online accessibility resource site for university disability liaison staff working with students with a disability, updated by accessibility professionals. And the most popular one that has 4 votes, can we come up with a solution to visually capture for people who are blind? To visual capture for people who are blind. So how do we want to do that? Does anyone got are you able to see or visit the Slido and maybe see some of those questions if you can? Or is there any of those that you'd like some more information about maybe? Yep. Yeah.
Do you want to take a microphone down, please? Yep.
With the ones regarding the programs and videos and films and stuff, I think it'd be a good idea to make sure we invite the producers of our West Australian Screen West people and Channel 9, Channel 7 and so on to these conferences and so on, so they can see the importance of it. and also just some of the casting people. I know some of my clients have got parts with different target, and someone's picked up quite a few disabled people last year or so, which is great. So it's getting out there, but we need to invite these people that make these decisions to these conferences and so on to see what difference it would make to them and how easy it is for them to actually do it.
No, that's a really good point. And Thursday afternoon, we do have Screen West here as a panel, and they've invited film industry people as a separate. So that's. I feel like we can tick that one off. No, we're not yet. But anyway, we're getting there. Yes?
Do you want people to vote on those?
On the ones that are in there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so does anybody need a hand?
Anyone need a hand to vote?
Yeah, link text, vote and one.
We don't necessarily only have to do one either.
Yeah.
So I think there are a couple of categories. We can see ones that are around accessibility professionals, which I personally have a huge interest in. So there's kind of that category, and then there's sort of almost software development type category for solutions.
And
so
I think the accessibility specialist ones will be, we'll be covering some of that with our AGM and membership of OZeWAI. I think that could be something we could discuss in our session tomorrow.
I'm just wondering if we could ask the people who've put up something to just tell us for a couple of minutes what it is that they really think is important.
those who are in the room.
Okay, yes. Yeah. Please come down the front.
Thanks, Bree. It's a bit of a story, everyone. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it gives context to the idea of unique link text all the time. The Guardian newspaper had an accessibility story. That was fantastic. Mass media accessibility story. It was really good. But it had, the journalist quoted an accessibility professional, not quite out of context, but without context. And the quote was something along the likes of, "Click here is okay." Now, the professional's argument, and this person is more of a professional than I am, he's a lifetime screen reader user. When I contacted him and questioned him, he said, "Click here under a meaningful heading gives enough context." My argument about visual presentation of unique link text all the time, so text that tells you where the link's taking you, is imagine a sea of headings and click here's, and some people might struggle with this click here is different to this click here. So WCAG doesn't support that, and I'd like that to happen.
At a AAA level, technically, AAA, you can't have various click.
No arguments at this point, thanks, Amanda.
I'm just saying, technically, from a AAA point of view.
I can talk about mine if you want.
Yeah, great. Oh, you have one.
Just to clarify for the other people in the room, but yeah, click here is specifically referenced in WCAG 2AA as a valid use of link text, which I completely disagree with. So I'm voting for Chris's one. I've been in the industry for a really long time, and people always used to ask me how I got into the industry, because I got in when I was 18 years old. And I was like, oh, well, I was just working for one of the web development firms, and, I was kind of a jack of all trades, and we got the work to build the first Vision Australia website, and we were like, they wanted their website accessible to blind people, and we're like, blind people don't use computers, and they gave it to me, the youngest with nothing to do, to figure out what the hell they were talking about. And so that was the story that I used to tell when people asked me why I got into accessibility. But about 3 or 4 years ago, about 2:00 in the morning, after working, a long day, I switched on the TV, and a TV show called Press Gang came on, and it was on when I was in high school. And there is a main character in that TV show, and I loved this show. Like, it was one of those things that we'd talk about all the time, you know, next day, etc. The main character, who was quadriplegic, who was a journalist, who used a sit puff machine. And I didn't recall that character at all, but it all came back. And I remember being a 13-year-old, seeing that and going, oh my God, and the first reaction that most people who don't interact with people with disabilities have, which is, oh my gosh, they can't do anything, they aren't really, you know, people or whatever, and then realising that they're just like everybody else. And so when we got that commission for the Vision Australia website, I was the one that said, well, yeah, of course we should make it accessible to people with disabilities. It was just something that I just thought was what we should do. And so because I'd already gone through that process a lot younger, going, oh, you know, the preconceptions I have about people with disabilities are incorrect. And so I really believe in order to progress accessibility in technology as well as in other areas, that we need to have much better representation on television and movies, because you get people young, and so you can have more people that have the same experience I had, who when they hear about, oh, but we need to make it accessible, they go, oh, hold on, what does that mean? They're like, oh, like for people who are blind, and they think, oh yeah, like that guy I saw on a TV show, you know, he'd want to, you know, buy a concert ticket too. So that's why I had my thing in there.
I can speak to the visual capture one because Greg's not here. It's the I am not a robot, and then up comes the 12-pane screen with how many traffic lights, how many crosswalks, how many motorbikes, how many cars, that kind of thing.
Anyone know if the pole is part of the sign? I'm still trying to figure it out.
Don't know, but it's really, really frustrating because there's rarely an alternative for it. But the old captures that used to have the letters, the numbers and lots of squiggly lines and they were difficult to read, they sometimes gave you an audio version which was completely inaccessible to the human ear. I think dogs could get it, but I don't think humans could. And the guide dog wasn't really good at telling us what the actual audio capture was. But if someone can find a solution to that, I'd be so happy.
If you haven't heard the audio bit for caption, play it. It sounds like a haunted house. It's really creepy.
My understanding is that the more recent version of Google's reCAPTCHA, they've come forward in leaps and bounds. From what I've seen, that have we can try it. There are other options though. There's one called what do they call it? Visual capture or something. Used to be Fun Capture, but they changed their name.
The guy that developed them is not that long ago. So the guy that did the capture originally had a 99% Invisible episode that everyone should listen to. It's a podcast, great podcast, where he talked about that the implementation is actually wrong for what he designed it for, and he is designing a new system that is completely different, and Google are working with him to do it. So it'll be like another month or two probably. You know, this was 6 months ago when he's publicly talking about it. So yeah, and
something to add. Back to an expert in the field.
That's right. I just wanted to add in that as our task force, research question task force, we just published W3C advice on the use of inaccessible capture. So if, it's just came out a few months ago. So if you search for inaccessible capture W3C online, myself and some of my colleagues were the editors for and did some research around that. So just to pick up on what people have said. So Capture V1 is the squiggly text with the audio, which is completely inaccessible and also not secure anymore. So if you do want to fight the fight about traditional captures, it's not even secure, let alone accessible. Capture V2 is the one with the tick box of I am not a robot. That has that fallback to those really difficult things to select. reCAPTCHA V3 doesn't prompt the user at all. So it uses basically your browser history, all sorts of sneaky back processes by Google, which is a little disturbing in itself. But if Google's figured out enough of what you're doing online to know that you are you, then it doesn't ask you anything at all. But it does still have a fallback to an inaccessible capture if it's suspicious. So, yeah.
The users of the assistive technologies always trigger the capture because the Google doesn't know that you're a person because you're accessing your website through an assistive technology. So the tick box and we've figured out you are you because you've used this computer in a certain way, just never ever works with assistive technologies. And we have someone who triggers captures in places that we never ever see them. So, setting up an Instagram account, setting up Facebook, all that kind of stuff, they always trigger that capture that is then inaccessible. So, yeah, it's terrible. Captures are terrible.
No, absolutely.
Terrible.
So we've got a whole list of things and alternatives around like email verification, biometrics, SMS verification, a whole stack of things on that W3C documents. I just thought I'd mention that if people do want to read more about that, because the advice was only just a few months ago. Also, just back to the question about having people with disability in TV and movies. I don't know if people are aware of the Attitude Foundation, which was a not-for-profit set up specifically to get people with disability into TV and movies. So that might be something to look at as well.
Also, I can vouch for what Scott's saying about alternatives. Worked for a government department who wanted a way around using the capture, and we used a mix of honeypot, but it did a lot of work with the security people. So it's making sure the security was, the back end was more secure, because the captures are a lazy way at the front end, basically.
My son was saying the other day he saw a YouTube video of AT. The guy's designed his robot to press tick, I'm not a robot, going over and pressing the button.
Just a comment about the question about accessibility certification. If you don't know about the professional certificate through the South Australian University, courtesy of Scott and various other people, that's one way to do the Australian certification.
Yeah, sorry, just staying on that topic. I think the point is not a question about captures, but about security. So, yeah, let's just focus on what the issue at hand is.
I saw a really great talk at the W3C Roadshow last year in February by Dr. David Cook, who is an ACS member, and he spoke about the tug between accessibility and security and privacy, which really are opposite ends of the scale, and we have to find that happy medium. I would love to tell you more about it. I've got notes on it somewhere, but come and chat to me later if you're interested, because that was really fascinating, because we want to make things more accessible, but there is a strong need for security as well, and security really does mean locking people out, and we're trying to make things more accessible. So it is an interesting line to play with.
That's exactly the point. Security is not going to go away. In fact, the issues regarding security are probably and arguably going to get more involved. And we do need a way to make sure that systems are secure. Capture is not necessarily the best solution, and working with your clients, working with your organisations to come up with what that's going to be, whether it's a honeypot, whether it's some sort of other solution. On the question regarding people with disability in film, I think you'll find that there is quite a bit of that on the ABC, and there is certainly a move for more, and you will find that as we move toward the 2019 to 2022 diversity and inclusion plan for the ABC, that's going to get ramped up even further.
Just as a tech person on the clarity around the capture thing, one of the things I'm most interested in hearing from about that is capture as a design principle keeps the person anonymous. Asking for mobile information or asking for other third-party connections means that you have to identify who you are in some capacity in order to pass that check. So we want to be able to provide security to say that we're not, having information harvested by computers, but we also want to keep the person who's accessing that information as anonymous as possible. So that's one of the challenges that we really struggle to overcome.
I'm also thinking that with these questions that are up there, what we might do is put up some of the links and the resources and things like that on that Slido page. We'll put the questions up, and we'll put maybe like Scott's link to the W3C, some of the other work. We might link to we've got forums.OZeWAI.org. If we want more discussion in there or more sharing of resources, please use that. And we'll put this kind of fishbowl, these questions in there, and maybe others might come in as well.
Just a comment, Matt, about the certification. I actually just did the WOZ exam in the last window and I passed, yes. And no. I'm going to do the other one on Thursday, so don't congratulate me yet. But my understanding is you can claim credits for Australian events. I will certainly be claiming certification credit for coming here to OZeWAI. I've submitted credit for going to AliCamp last year and to a Melbourne web meetup. So while the IAAP certainly does sort of pre-acknowledge the American events that they know and are familiar with, if you do submit details of other events that aren't on their shortlist, like most of our Australian events, they will go and check out the details and assess it and go, yes, if it's an accessibility relevant event, it will count as credit towards keeping your certification up to date. So they're not anti-Aussie. As far as I know, not yet. Yeah, if I get knocked back for any of my claims, I'll let you know. But to date, all of the conversations that I've had so far are that I'm an Aussie, I'm going to predominantly Australian events, and they're going, yes, you can submit for those and we'll, within reason, recognise them.
Just on that, I'm going to CSUN in March, and I think there's probably a few people in this room that are going to CSUN as well. And I'm doing a series of webinars on mobile accessibility for IAAP, so I'll be meeting with them. So if you have anything specific that you think would be helpful, maybe we can put it on Slido or something. I can actually go to them and say, hey, we talked to the OZeWAI conference people and it would be really helpful if you did X, Y, Z to, make it more accessible to people who are outside of the US.
Yeah, all I need to do is just put OZeWAI on the list so that you can check off OZeWAI. I mean, we have the exam here. Why isn't it on the list? I don't know.
I wonder too if it's a bigger question, the context of Australia in general. So the exam, for those who have taken it, could we have something that is recognised? And from an OZeWAI perspective, as a body, what we can do, I think it's a much bigger discussion than just certification, but really showcasing. We showcase every year OZeWAI professionals in this field, and yeah, I just wonder if it's a much bigger question than just certification.
I think we've been thinking about OZeWAI in the future, and I think one of the things that we would like to bring up tomorrow at the AGM and certainly not settle is what kinds of certification or recommendation or something do we want? Because if somebody doesn't know anyone and they come to the website, it'd be really nice if they could find, well, this person's actually going to be able to help us with this and they have some authority in that field, but that person does something completely different. So I think it's something that would be really helpful to think about, and thinking about Australia and, if you could give a tick that you've been doing something at OZeWAI, it makes very good sense for us to have events online throughout the year as well. So we might do a course on, well, for just an example would be John's mobile thing could be something that perhaps you could run online in June or something, and people could say, yes, I've updated with that one. I think it's a model that we should adopt and it would be very helpful to us, but please think about it and give us feedback.
Okay, I think, Cherry's got something else.
Yeah, there was an anonymous question in there, and so I'm happy to talk to the person anonymously as well if they want to. But whoever put the question up about, where's it gone? Sorry. Making PDFs accessible. If you want to have a chat to me at some point, just come and grab me.
Yeah. We'll put a little summary. Maybe you can put something together in links in the summary for the question for that. From those items, though, is there anything that we can workshop a little bit more over the next couple of days? We might discuss that. Amanda, you and I can have a look and see what's there, and maybe if there's a workshop tomorrow or something, we can spend some time to
please
go over
vote. It. So that's going to be our way of telling your interest. So please do use that website and vote so that we can gauge really where the interest is.
just wanted to speak to the two that I've got up there. It's actually two, not three. I forgot to add some words in the second one. But looking at the nexus of security and accessibility, it does actually incorporate the capture issue as well, but I was thinking of it as on a more broader level. Looking at things like cloud technology, remote desktops, all kinds of technology that's been developed to protect the security of companies and the information, etc., and organisations. Also, looking at my second one, how can industry work with consumer bodies, consumer organisations to increase their awareness of accessibility and then act on it. And that came about from a conversation we had in the ADIA workshop, where we were talking about, in Australia, the legal aspect of resolving issues is just not there. It's not strong. Issues are settled out of court, they're settled individually, and we don't get any systemic outcomes as a result. It's very successful in America, but not here. So what else can we do to bring about an awareness of accessibility and the will to make it happen among industry? And so we looked at several options, and one of them was that building a kind of link between consumer organisations and industry to try and make that happen.
Yeah, so we'll probably put some more information about the ADIA workshop and the things that came up also on the forums, so forums.ozewai.org. So pop in there and see, you've all got this amazing amount of resources that we don't want to duplicate, so please share there as well. That's great. Thanks, Elle. Is David there?
Well done. Yeah. Done and dusted. Let's switch all these off. Awesome. Well done. You survived day one of the Australian Accessibility Conference. Give yourself a big clap and a big pat in the back.